school district. So that's really, I think, the thing that sets the two of us apart, is we both have educational experience, but I have local experience. I understand the community. I'm an out-of-the-box thinker. I make things happen. I did that when I was a principal. I did that when I was at the district office, and I will do that as a policymaker working with the current board. Mike Mergio, please vote for me on November 6th. Thank you very much.
That is one of the bigger differences between us. Mike worked in the district for 30 plus years, and I have not. I've been new to this. I'm new to this community. I've been here about 7 years. I think that I bring with me new ideas, new energy, new leadership. I think that that's something that we need in the district, and I'm happy to bring some fresh ideas. I have 2 different pieces of literature. I gave it to most of you. Some of you might not have gotten it, and it's out back. This is my walk card, but I created this just for this event because I want to make sure that you understand some of the details about me, because I think that it's important that you understand the experience. I personally haven't experienced a lot of racism, a lot of discrimination, but I want you to know that I have dedicated my life to try to understand and make a difference. As I mentioned, I founded and ran a school for homeless children. I was the students were all black students, and by about a half year later, I was the only white person there, because I thought it was very important that we had black teachers and black staff working there. I was a researcher for the Institute on Race and Poverty, wrote speeches for a civil rights attorney. I helped settle the NAACP lawsuit. I was a researcher on one side of it. I became the commissioner, and I was able to settle it because I had done all the research for the NAACP. So I have very deep knowledge about the economics and housing and education. And it's important for me that you know that about me. So thank you. Christine Jacks.
Thank you. Thank you, audience, for those great questions that you submitted. They were wonderful and a great contribution to the panel this evening. Thank you, Mr. Mergio.
Thank you.
Dr. Jacks, those were very, very good responses. I think that it was very informative to everyone that was here.
They were great questions.
Thank you. Thank you to Latanzia and our special timekeeper, Tanya. I'm going to turn it over.
And thank you to our lovely moderator. We really do appreciate you guys taking the time to come and speak to us about these issues, and we look forward to interacting with you thereafter.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
you.
And we all know I should stay and listen to these amendments, but I have another event. So it was nice meeting everybody, and well, bye.
Okay, as we segue, I want to take a moment to recognize some of our other elected officials that were not here on the onset. Dr. Robinson is present with us tonight, so thank you for coming out. And Representative Matt Bernard, who's also here, and then Representative-elect Bobby Powell is here. So thank you guys for coming out. All right, again, we know the focus is on the debate tonight, so we're going to jump right into these amendments. We suspect that there are going to be many questions that you have about them. So I want to go ahead and introduce Ms. Mary Jane. Grange. Okay, Mary Jane, she's going to tell us the pros and the cons of the amendments. And any questions that you guys have, we can ask them throughout the session. Thank you very much.
If anybody doesn't have one, please maybe you could raise your hand. And thanks. Thank you very much for inviting the League of Women Voters today. I'm delighted to be here on their behalf. I chair the Speakers Bureau. This is our 97th speaking engagement in the past 3 months. So we have been a very busy group. I know I am the only thing probably standing between you and the debate, so we'll march this along pretty quickly. But I have to say, this is probably the most complex set of amendments that have come to the ballot, and it's important that everybody understand. You know, you vote for candidates, but some of these things really affect your pocketbook in a very, very big way. I'd like to start by addressing the issue of the homestead exemptions. There are 5 amendments out of the 11 that refer to property tax reductions. for certain classes of people. The league has been in consultation with a number of organizations, and the best estimate that we can come up with, that is if all 5 of those passed, and those are numbers 2, 4, 9, 10, and 11. You want to make a little note on that. 2, 4, 9, 10, and 11. Statewide, in the first 3 years, there will be a tax decrease to local communities, at the county and the municipal level, in excess of $1.2 billion. Now, what does that actually mean? If you reduce the revenue that's coming into a county, there are 2 things that can happen. You either cut services, and I think we've all pretty much become accustomed to our police, fire, libraries, etc., or you raise the millage rate on the rest of the property holders in that municipality or county. Okay? So I will tell you as we go through each one, the impact, the financial impact of each of those, and what it means. Will you do, when I get to the county ones, are you gonna do the slot machines? Okay. There are 2 county referendum, we're gonna take care of those after. I'm gonna start with the amendments, and first of all, I think it's important to have a little civics lesson. How do amendments get to the ballot? There are 5 ways. The 2 most frequently are through citizens petition and through the legislature. Citizens petitions are really hard to do. You may remember a couple of years ago that the League of Women Voters and several other organizations came together because we recognized that in this state, the districts, the voting districts were not equal, sometimes in population, etc. And we got 2 amendments onto the ballots, amendments 5 and 6. Maybe some of you remember signing the petitions. Each one required more than 600,000 valid signatures. That's a lot of signatures, and each of them has to be validated by the individual supervisors of elections. This election, there are no citizen petitions on the ballot. All of these amendments have come from the legislature. And we have a legislator here who is better at explaining how that happens certainly than I am. It's important for you to remember all of these have come from our legislature, and they pass in bills in the House and the Senate. So the first one that was passed is number 1, and its title is, and if you're going to follow along in that little newspaper that I gave you, number 1 is called Healthcare Services. Now, the other important thing to remember is, how many of you, by the way, have already seen the ballot? You're voting by mail. Anybody? Yeah. Were you surprised when you got 3 pages? Yeah. The language is very, very complex, and some of these are very long. The text is very long because the legislature has no limits on the number of words that can be used in an amendment. Nor are they restricted to the number of subjects that can be in any one amendment, and we'll see further on. He's got it back there. We'll see further on that some of these have 3 and 4 parts, but you get only 1 vote. So the first one, Healthcare Services, was put onto the ballot before June of this year. And in June of this year, you may remember that the United States Supreme Court ruled that the individual mandate in the Affordable Health Care Act was in fact lawful. What this amendment seeks to do, since it was put on before that, and the intention was to have a vote saying that Florida would not comply with the Affordable Health Care Act, and specifically the individual mandate in the Affordable Health Care Act. Okay? Now, in some ways it has become a moot point since the Supreme Court ruling in June. Yet it is also looked at by some as a referendum on how the electorate looks at universal health care in this state. So if you are voting yes on Amendment 1, you understand that it would represent an attempt to opt Florida out of federal health care. Okay? I mean, essentially, I'm going to try and move through these pretty quickly if it's all right with you, and then I'll take as many questions as you're going to allow. And then on number one, if you vote no on number one, you're essentially saying that you understand that Florida should comply with the individual mandate of the Affordable Health Care Act. Okay? Some people refer to the Affordable Health Care Act as Obamacare. I always refer to it with its proper name, the Patient Affordability Health Care Act. Okay? That's number one. Number two is one of the first property tax amendments that we have on the ballot, and again, I'll read just the title. Veterans disabled due to combat injury, homestead property tax discount. Currently, disabled veterans can get a deduction on their property taxes if they meet three or four criteria. One, they have to have been disabled in combat. Two, they had to live in Florida when they went into the service. Three, they have to have a homesteaded property here in Florida. And they have to be 65 years or older. What this amendment seeks to do is to expand the class of individuals that's eligible by including veterans who did not live in Florida when they entered the service. Okay? We don't know, and it would be very hard to estimate how many people living in Florida right now would qualify for this. But those who are opposed to this would say this would make Florida a very attractive place for veterans to move to because who were disabled, by the way, because they would get a reduction in their property taxes. And the deduction is equal, and this is where it gets complicated. If the Veterans Administration says a veteran is, I'll just say 20% disabled, then they get 20% deduction in their property tax, okay? So it's the same percentage that the VA says the veteran has been disabled. So if you say yes, you would give the existing homestead deduction to veterans who did not live in Florida before they went into the service. And if you say no, very simply, you're saying keep it the way it is. Now again, our best estimate on this is that in the first 3 years, statewide, there will be a decrease in revenue of $15 million. I don't have Palm Beach County impacts, financial impacts. I wish I did have those numbers, but I don't. Okay so far? Everybody still awake? Okay. Because now number 3 is probably, if these are all complex, this is one of the most complex. And it is called the state government revenue limitation. I will try to make this as simple as possible, not because I don't think you're smart, it's because I have spent to learn exactly what this amendment does. Currently in the Constitution, there is a number, and it's called a revenue cap. And essentially what it says is that it represents all of the income that the state takes in, licenses, fees, etc. And revenue should not exceed that cap. If it does, it's supposed to go into what's called a rainy day fund. That cap has never been exceeded, ever. What this amendment seeks to do is to change the way that cap is calculated by introducing 2 new variables. One of them is population increase, and the other is inflation. Now, let me just step back a minute. We do have one piece of data about this. Colorado, back in 1992-3, implemented a very similar statute. Within a very few years, 3 or 4, they had to suspend the use of this revenue cap because they were no longer able to meet their financial obligations. They were unable to fund education. They were unable to fund infrastructure, bond